Chapter 8 is a continuation of chapter 7, when the emissaries, presumably from Bavel, came and asked Zechariah whether or not they have to continue fasting. Again, they're not asking Zechariah; they're asking Zechariah as the conduit to God. So God comes to Zechariah and says as follows: words that we have seen recently in different prophecies here in Zechariah and other books, that God is zealous, that God wants Zion. He's fierce. He wants to see the return of Jerusalem. He's had enough of its destruction. And thus, Ko Amar Adonai, Shavti al Tzion v'shachanti b'toch Yerushalayim v'nikra Yerushalayim ir ha'emet v'har Adonai tzvot har hakodesh. God says, I've returned to Zion. I will dwell in Jerusalem. Jerusalem will be called the city that is faithful, the city of truth, and the mountain of God will once again be the holy mountain, the Har HaBayit, the mountain upon which the Beit HaMikdash was built, will once again gain that status of sanctity. We're in verse 4. Kol Amar Adonai Tzvaot, Od Yeshivas Kenim Uzkenot B'Rechovot Yerushalayim Ve'ish Mishanto Biado Merov Yamim. God says it's going to happen again. They're going to be the elderly men and women in the squares of Jerusalem, each one with a staff in their hand because of their great age, right? You're not going to be cut off when you're young. Think of all the terrible prophecies that were given by Yirmiyahu, by Yechezkel, by Yeshayahu, these prophecies that the young are going to be killed. Think of Echo, which haven't gotten there yet, but the women boiling their children because they're so hungry. They're cooking their children. Nobody's getting old because all there is destruction. That's what he says is not going to happen. So we'll have the elderly demonstrating that destruction is not happening, that enemies are not coming in. People are going to live nice, long lives. And in addition, boys and girls will be playing in their squares. It's going to be joyous. It's going to be a place of happiness. Ko Amar Adonai Tzvaot. Though it would seem impossible to the small remnant of people, whether this is the few people who are left after Gedaliah, which is whether this is around the 50,000 or so that we've spoken about, that returned to rebuild the second Beit HaMikdash when they're first given permission back in 538 by Koresh, and now it's about the year 517 or so, 20 years later, and finally they're in the middle of building this Beit HaMikdash. This looked like it was impossible to you. I wouldn't have believed it either. It was so far-fetched. We're in verse 7, Ko Amar Adonai Tzvaot Hineni Moshia et Ami Me Eretz Mizrach Ume Eretz Mavo HaShemesh. So God said, I will rescue my people from the lands of the east and the lands of the west. Veheveti otam v'shachnu b'toch Yerushalayim v'hayu li la'am v'ani ehye lahem le'elohim be'emet u'v'tzedakah. I will bring them home to Jerusalem. They will be my people. I will be their God. And with what? Through truth and righteousness. In the previous chapter, God said, I want truth. I want an equitable society. I want justice. I'm going to be your people. You're going to be me. You're going to be I'm going to be your God. You're going to be my people. It's going to be truthful. It's going to be equitable. It's going to be just. It's going to be kind. Ko Amar Adonai Tzvaot. Techezakna yedechem hashomim b'yamim ha'ela et hadvarim ha'ela. So God says, so listen and be strong, be courageous. Those of you who are hearing the words of the prophet when the foundations were laid for the rebuilding of the temple. This could be the words of Zechariah and the words of Haggai, presumably. Because before that time, things were difficult. We talked about this book of Haggai. Haggai says, go build the Beit HaMikdash. The people say, we're too poor. And God's message is, just do it. Yeah, you work all day and it's like you have a hole in your sack where you hold your materials and all the stuff falls out. As long as you don't build the temple, as long as you don't do what you're supposed to be doing, everything else is not going to be successful. Right? All of your work, all of the difficulties was for naught. It was nil. It was not safe. There were enemies everywhere around. But now, that's not how I'm treating the people anymore, God says. Ki zera hashalom But that's not the way it is anymore. There are grapes and there are all sorts of vegetables and fruit from the ground, and there's rain. And all these things will remain and will continue for this small amount of people. So he says, and just as you were a curse, right? You were a laughing stock. How? As we say at the beginning of Eicha, how could such a beautiful city, such a trusted city, become so empty, such a disgusted by all? So the same way you became a curse, and of course we haven't read the book of Eicha yet in our reading of Tanakh, but this is after Eicha. It's after the description of the destruction of the first temple in the year 586. So just like you became a curse, so too you will become a blessing. So too you will be things, you will be a nation, you will be an idea that people look at and respect. And therefore be strong, be brave. This was verse 14. Just as I afflicted you, your ancestors, because they provoked me, because they didn't listen to me, and I had no nechama, I had no compassion, I didn't relent. So just as I did the bad, I'm going to do the good. I am planning beautiful things for Jerusalem, for the house of Yehuda. Al tiru, don't be scared. Ela dvarim asher tasu, dabru emet ishet rehehu, emetu mishpat shalom shivtu b'sha'arechem. And so this is what you need to do. Speak truth. Be just, be kind, be peaceful. That's the way your gates, that's what has to be. That's what everything has to be in your society. And don't think of evil plots. Don't think of how you could defraud everybody. And don't love lying and perjury. Because these are all of the things that I hate. Okay. Now we get perhaps to the next prophecy. Finally, we get the answer to this question. The question from yesterday's chapter. So God came to me and he said, Ko amar Adonai, tzvaot, tzom haravi'i, v'tzom hachamishi, v'tzom hashvi'i, v'tzom ha'asiri, yelevet Yehuda l'sason u'lesimcha u'lemoadim tovim, v'amet v'hashalom ehavu. God says, finally, the answer. The fast of the 4th month and the 5th month. That would be the 17th day of the month of Tammuz. That would be the 9th day of the month of Ab. Tzom Gedalia is the 7th month, and the 10th month is Asara B'Tevet, when the siege was laid, around Jerusalem. They will become days of happiness and joy and gladness. But only if you act with shalom and emet, if you love truth and peace, if you really build this equitable society. God says peoples, all sorts of people are going to come. And there are going to be people going up and right there. Why are you traveling? Why are you guys all traveling east or west or south? And somebody else goes, where are you going? They're saying, oh, we're going to Jerusalem to ask God. And what will be the response of the people? Oh, we'll go too. You're going to Jerusalem. You're going to that great city. We're going to go as well. Uvo, we're in verse 22. And thus many people, multitudes of nations will come to seek out God in Jerusalem and to ask for God's favor. Sounds pretty good for the economy of Jerusalem. In those days, what's going to happen? 10 people from the nations of every tongue, of every ethnicity and race, etc., will go to a Jew and will grab them by their cloak, not threatening them, but asking them for help. Let us go with you, for we have heard that God is with you. And here we see, and this is, we said partially in the book of Haggai as well here in the book of Zechariah, these are hopeful books. Here we're a couple of years later. This is not just build it; it will happen. It's okay. The Beit HaMikdash is already being built. Things are moving along well. It's moving along so well that people wonder whether or not we're going to have to fast anymore. And the answer that's given is you won't have to fast if you listen to the message of God, the message of a just society, the message of a just civilization. Why did I take you out of Egypt? Why did I bring you to this land? Why did I give you this homeland? I didn't give it to you so you could, create high tech. High tech is good, but that's not the reason I gave it to you. The reason I gave it to you is to create an equitable and a just society. That is the message, as we probably said before, of the Tanakh. The message of the Tanakh is not to put on tefillin at Nate's. That's not the message of the Tanakh. The message of the Tanakh is not to make sure that all of your mezuzot are kosher, even if that's important. The message of Tanakh is equitable, just society, kindness, compassion to all. And so that's why that's in the midst of that question. The midst of that question is, I ask the question, the answer is build the society. If as that society happens, there won't be destruction anymore, because that's why there was destruction in the first place. And if it happens that there's no destruction, because you build that equitable society, what's going to happen? It's not just you're going to be living in peace, but you are going to be an ideal, a city on a hill, to quote our Puritans of the United States of America way back when. It was the Puritans, right? Mayflower and all that. I think I get it. I don't think I'm off on that one. I know I'm not as close to New England as you guys are, but that is the message. And if you do that, everybody will want to be with you. You will be like, you'll be like Tom Brady in the NFL. Everybody wanted to play with Tom Brady. He was always winning. That's what you'll be. Everybody will grab onto you, say, pass me the ball. I'll sign for the minimum contract if I can go play for the Jerusalem righteous individuals. And so the answer that is given by Zechariah to this question is, no, you don't have to fast. These days will be days of joy. And they'll be days of joy because you will build the society. And that's the hopeful message of this book, and the great hope that was given at the time of the beginning of the second Beit HaMikdash. So as we said multiple times, it didn't fully come into fruition. Because Zerubbabel disappears, he doesn't become king like his ancestors, like the other Davidic dynasty. But the hope is there. And in our own lives, I think when we see something that's being built that could be great, we need to both hope, and what these chapters are saying is do what's right to build whatever institution it is into its ideal situation, so that all of the greatness and the potential that's in it can rise to the top.